Okay, welcome to episode 37 of the Ricky Henderson podcast, the greatest of all podcasts, G.O.A.P. We got Jeff August on here. You might recognize his byline from today's article in the SF Gate, but he's a multi-talented, omni-channel human being, as he likes to say. I'll let him. We'll get into that. Everything he's been tracking this A's new stadium search for over 20 years. Jeff, how you doing, man? You good?
I am doing fantastic, and I'm really happy to be here with you, dude.
Yeah, and you're following up your friend Casey Pratt, so it's like big shoes to fill, dude.
Well, I got to be honest, it's bigger shoes because I've been catching up on your podcast because I didn't know how awesome it was. And yesterday I walked around listening to the Ken Korak episode from
Oh
back,
yeah,
and
yeah,
that was
yeah.
like, I was like, holy cow, I need to listen to that like 6 times. There's so much
Oh, thanks.
amazing
Yeah,
stuff in
yeah.
there.
I like to make them so you can like listen to them later on, and it's still relevant. Like it's some of it's timely, but a lot of it I hope is kind of evergreen, and people can still enjoy it. So thanks, dude.
Yeah,
I'm glad you
you were
like that. Yeah.
talking, we're talking about ballparks, and you were talking, Tim, about like his days with the Redwood Pioneers, which later became the Sonoma County Crushers. And
Yeah.
I know the ballpark that's been replaced by a Costco, and it was one of the most cool stadiums I've ever been to in my life.
Really?
And it's sad that it's gone. Yeah,
Yeah, that's where the whole lights are taking effect started, dude. So yeah,
yeah,
that was
that's
funny
right.
to
The
hear.
lights have come on,
Yeah.
but not yet taken effect.
Yeah.
Baby, Ken Korak is awesome. I actually saw him that morning, by the way, because we both live in Pleasanton,
Oh,
and I
uh-huh.
was sitting at breakfast with my wife, and he walked by, and I'm just like starstruck, and he gave me a fist bump, and I was like, oh,
Yeah, Ken's the man. Ken's the coolest. I really like Ken a lot. Ken is awesome, dude.
yeah, he's dope.
So yeah, congrats on your column in today's SFK. Seems like it's been pretty well received. That kind of bringing some historical context to everything.
Yeah.
How would you kind of summarize? I know it was pretty lengthy, but how would you go? This is a podcast. We got time. How would you summarize? Kind of the point that you want to make to readers. How you used to be against Howard Terminal as a site, but now you've warmed up to it.
Yeah, and I think so. To say this in a really straightforward way, I believe that the biggest problem in the world today, like regardless of whether it's a baseball stadium or anything else, is that people start with facts.
Mhm.
I mean, start with an opinion and then try to find facts to back up their opinion. And I would invite anybody who has an opinion about Howard Terminal to just read that piece, because I used to be against it, but I have let facts form my opinion. And
Mhm.
now I understand exactly why it makes a whole bunch of sense.
Mhm.
And we can walk through all that stuff, but that's really what it's about. It's about don't let the opinion decide for you what facts decide. Let the facts decide what your opinion is.
Yeah. I'm curious because it's you've been following this since 2001, 2002. What was the climate like then? Can you give some perspective on
Yeah,
why you got interested in it then?
yeah.
And you dropped recently like the HOK, like that architect group, their whole plan. It was interesting to see like their plans they had multiple plans for downtown, for the Coliseum, for over there at
Yeah.
Howard Terminal.
Yeah,
um
you guys can see
yeah,
the executive summary. I actually put it's weird because when I was writing that article, I
yeah,
was like, man, this executive summary is really helpful.
yeah.
I
Plug your
wonder where,
website, dude. Where can they find it? What's your
oh,
website?
it's at jeffaugustegotrip.com, jeffreyaugust.com. Those
Uh-huh.
both go to the same place, with it's just my WordPress blog that I've been,
Uh-huh.
updating forever, and it has stuff on there.
Uh-huh.
Um, and that's where it is. It's at jeffaugustegotrip.com. You'll see a link to that document, because as I was trying to find it on the internet, I realized I had a copy of it in my Dropbox that I've had in there for decades, or
Uh-huh.
a long time, a decade at least.
Uh-huh.
And I couldn't find it anywhere else on the internet, so I just put it up so people could go look at it, because it's like a time capsule.
It's
You go
really
look at it.
interesting to see. Yeah, it's kind of cool. Like I like the we're gonna talk about this later, but the whole downtown plan too would have been kind of cool.
I mean,
Yeah.
like the uptown Oakland was by far, to me, like it was the spot back then that it's terrible that it was a shot not taken. And I think a lot of times people will think about this and want to blame Jerry Brown or blame the A's ownership at the time or blame all kinds of people. But
Mhm.
I'm also a person who doesn't think that blame really matters anymore. At this point, we are where we are, and looking back is really cool. But and that would have been a fantastic, I mean, like it would have changed the world of Oakland and that part of the town. But the thing that they did anyway
Mhm.
in that spot started made things happen. But actually,
Yeah.
a weird thing is one of the stadiums that I would use as a comp for a Howard Terminal site is the site that the Nationals Park was built on. And
Uh-huh.
that only came to be because the guy who was pushing the plan in Oakland essentially got fired for pushing this ballpark plan in Oakland and
Really
ended up in Washington, D.C. And he's the architect of the plan to build Nationals Park. His name's
crazy.
Robert Bob. And he's
Uh-huh.
actually here now working with AASE, the African American Sports and Entertainment
Yeah.
Group,
So
on their Coliseum plans. So it's such a tangled web that goes over a
interesting. So
long,
he
long time.
yeah, he could get like revenge on the A's or something like that, right?
Well, I think it'd be
Yeah.
more like he's trying to just do
Yeah, I
something
don't
to make
know.
something happen. It's not whether the A's or the city, like
Yeah.
they, at that point, back then, like Jerry Brown didn't want there to be a baseball stadium there. The Oakland A's didn't, Steve Schott, the Schott Hoffman era, they didn't
Mhm.
really want a stadium to be there. And as I recall back then, Schott was really focused on doing something in Santa Clara, but Hoffman was much more focused on doing something at the
Mm.
Oakland waterfront. All the way back then, that's what he wanted to do. And the place he wanted to do it
Uh-huh.
at was, everyone referred to it as the Jack London Square Park, even back then, but it was Howard Terminal.
Really? So that same 55-acre lot that they're considering now, that's what they were looking at in 2001? Was that right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because a lot of things back then that made it difficult didn't have been addressed in other ways that have made it a different kind of difficult now.
Mhm.
Like for instance, there was a bunch of toxic waste. It's a port, right? There's a lot of stuff underneath there. So
Mhm.
if they had decided to build a ballpark back then, they would have done what they did at China Basin and everywhere else. They would have cleared out all that dirt and took it somewhere else. But they didn't. They decided they weren't going to build a ballpark there, so they just capped it all in asphalt. So right now, underneath Howard Terminal, there's an asphalt cap that
That's
has
crazy.
all of that stuff still there, and it's going to be there forever unless there's some reason to move it, like hint hint a ballpark to clean all that stuff out. So
And,
anyway.
and and the A's have said like they would be willing to pay for all this environmental remediation and everything like that, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
But
and that's the thing
it's
that,
like not as easy. It's like that's a whole Pandora's box in itself. I know there's a million Pandora's boxes in this project, but that's another one, right? It's like just the cleanup at the site that would be necessary, right?
right.
Like
And so like I think, I had a list in my I have to be honest, like 2 years ago I really stopped paying attention to this because I was so frustrated with the whole thing. I'm like, you know what, I've been following this forever, and
mhm,
um I it's just a waste of time for me at this point to waste energy on this. And what really brought me back into it was reading a tweet from Ann Killian that was, to me, I just was like, what in the heck is this? Because a friend sent it to me and
because
it
like the
said,
was there why was that? What struck you about the tweet?
well, this is what it said. Um, Somebody had tweeted to her about Chase Center being out in the middle of nowhere.
Mhm,
And she replied, it's not out in the middle of nowhere. It's 3 blocks beyond, AT&T Park. And if you go and you do I did it on Apple Maps right at that point in time, in map from 12th Street BART to where Howard Terminal is, it's about a little bit, it's right about a mile. It's like not much further. The
mhm,
difference between where Chase Center is and BART, the difference between those two is about 5/10 of a mile. It's not even that far apart.
mhm.
And that's what I'm talking about with the whole idea of let the facts form your opinion, because she's saying her opinion and then just assuming the facts back her up. She didn't even compare those two things, but made a comparison saying one's way out in the middle of nowhere and hard to get to, and the other one is, right in the middle of the city,
So like
which is
Chase Center's
like,
like a mile and a half away, and
yeah,
then
yeah, it's
and
like,
then
it's not,
yeah.
it's really, Howard Terminal and Chase Center are actually a pretty good comparable thing to talk about because they are a similar distance from BART, and it hasn't impacted Chase Center in a negative way. Like, I mean, people go there. Obviously, the pandemic did,
Mhm,
but before that, people found their way there for Ariana Grande concerts, and I mean, it's
mhm,
not like it's impossible to get to that. And so there it is. And other people talk about things like the train system, the Muni that runs out there. But I don't know. I worked at Dropbox, and we were 1 block away from Oracle Park, and I can tell you, just
mhm.
from watching it happen, the number of people who walk from BART to that neighborhood versus the people who ride the train down the Embarcadero is like, it's like 10 to 1. It's not really that last mile transit thing is not that big of a problem for the overwhelming majority of people who need to get to a ballpark or
Mhm.
an event like at Chase Center. Anyway, The other thing about that that's really important when we're thinking about like Howard Terminal and Chase Center is how they built Chase Center is they put some corporate towers right there, like right next to it. And do you know who
Mhm.
the people are, the companies that took those towers, that took down that space and are helping to fund that stadium are Uber and Dropbox. Both
Mhm.
of those people moved further away from BART in order to be a part of that development. So it's like this whole thing about transportation, yada, yada, it's just not as
Interesting.
big of an
Yeah.
issue as people make it. And actually, to have Dropbox, which is one of the most socially responsible companies I've ever worked for, especially thinking about like environmental and that sort of stuff, not concerned about how people are going to get to the office,
Mhm.
and not thinking that that's this massive problem. I mean, I get it. Like they could do the same thing at Howard Terminal. They have those buildings that they want to build by Schnitzer Steel and between the stadium. Those are all for corporations, right? So
Yeah.
instantly you'd have a new corporate base in Oakland to pay taxes. And it's not a problem for people. They're going to want to be there because it's right on the waterfront. You know, I
And
mean,
like
it's like
they
a
could
cool
have like
thing.
like yeah, people could either live there or like it would be, West Oak would be one BART ride away from downtown the city if they want to live in the city. Like, yeah, I
Yeah,
understand. Like, yeah.
there's so much synergy there that makes a whole bunch of sense. And actually, I don't I know I'm sorry, I'm starting to just ramble on about these different things about Howard Terminal, and I know you have real questions you want to ask me, but I just would like to say that like Chase Center is just one example of a comparable situation. Nationals Park, what I mentioned earlier, is another. And because of my
Mhm.
job, I've gone back to Northern Virginia, Washington
Yeah,
D.C.
well, I
area a
was
lot
gonna
of
say, I was
times.
just gonna let people know, like, yeah, like, what is the, what is the background like? So you worked with Yahoo, Facebook, and Dropbox to pick out data center sites like all over the country. So that kind of gives you the technical background that
Yeah, I
that
mean,
you're because it seems like
it's part of that.
you're pretty tapped into all this stuff. It's
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
yeah,
so at each one of those places, and also I worked at Square. So I basically my technology career went Yahoo, Facebook, uh, Square, and then Dropbox. And I now work at a small startup company, not startup, we're a public company in Oakland, which
Mhm.
is also a great development to have a technology company in Oakland right on the banks of Lake Merritt. I'm all for that. But
Mhm.
uh, essentially, my job at those places was to build out network infrastructure to help select sites that we might want to put things into. And if we were building a very massive data center, my job was to be part of the negotiating team to get us rights of way for fiber paths into the buildings and other things. And really,
So you're working with municipalities and you're kind of like a liaison with the municipalities in your company and stuff like that, right?
right,
Yeah,
right. And
yeah.
and actually, so one of the things that's important to think about here is like when we hear now Dave Cavill and John Fisher do not need me to defend them. And frankly, they don't want me to defend them because I wouldn't defend them in the way that they probably want to be defended. But one of the things that I think comes up quite a bit is like this $200 million investment. And people are like, wait, but they've only picked Howard Terminal at this point in time. But there's a parallel here that I think is important for my professional life to explain. When you start to think, okay, we're going to put a data center in like Eastern Oregon, or we're going to put it in the Western United States, you don't, you start booking the money that you're spending on that eventual site well before you actually pick that specific site. So we would spend tens of millions of dollars in order to be able to spend hundreds of millions of dollars in a local place that we didn't know where it was. Like there was a whole team of
Because you have
us
to do
that were
research, right? You have to hire all those people to do all the work, to do the legwork, to give you a basic
all of it.
understanding, right? Yeah, yeah.
Right. And if I and like we would even do things like so this not to get super technical, but like in some places we're building data centers way up in the northern
Yeah.
part of the globe so that we can minimize one of our biggest costs, which is to cool computers. Because you have a room full of computers,
Yeah.
it gets super
Well, like
hot.
I actually I kind of want to bring it back to the stadium. I
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
want to. Yeah, yeah. Let's bring it back
yeah.
to the stadium. Yeah, yeah. No offense,
No,
dude.
no, no.
No, no,
I
yeah,
was actually I was going to
yeah.
this. I wanted to make sure we're
Okay.
clear on
Yeah,
something.
yeah, yeah,
Market research that you start doing. So like the
yeah.
things when they're talking about that $200 million, they're talking about like even the treehouse is part of that. All the people that are working on it. This is all things that you're doing to help prove out a specific site in the future. So all
Mhm.
of that is related specifically to That's what that money comes from. So when people talk about it, so anyway, that's it.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
for
yeah.
the stadium
But
thing,
yeah, but like you said there's some parallels with Nationals Park too, right? What year was Nationals Park built, and how are those two? How is this
so
kind of connected?
Nationals Park was I want to say it's around 2006 that it actually went
Uh-huh.
up. I don't remember specifically,
Uh-huh. It looks
but
like it
I
goes up.
went
Yeah,
to it the very first year that it was up, and what it was a stadium that was built right on the river
yeah,
in
2008. Yep.
Anacostia.
Yeah, 2008.
And
Yeah. Uh-huh.
and between there's a metro station that's about I don't know how far away. I'd say it's about a mile of a walk, maybe a little bit shorter, to where the stadium was. And in between those two spots, it was nothing. There was absolutely nothing there.
Hmm.
So every other year for the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years, whatever it's been, I've I've been back there and I've gone to games. And what's happened during that period of time is those two spots, like from where the metro is to where the stadium is, has just become a vibrant neighborhood. They've been building residences, they've been building office buildings, they've been building everything there. And that's part of the strategy behind a place like Howard Terminal, which is you put an anchor at the edge of where downtown is. So, like a mile away from downtown, you know the path to growth there. Oakland has a thing called the downtown specific plan that they're working
Hmm.
on now that's been that includes all the land right up to Howard Terminal already
Yeah, it
that
looks
they
like a
want to
like
see
60 or
developed.
70%. They're already trying to revitalize downtown anyways. And then the A's are trying to claim that in the Jack London Square offsite IFD. So the city's like, whoa, like who's to
Right,
say
but
you
see,
guys are
but
responsible for all of that, you know?
I
Yeah.
think, but the thing is that we should all think about, and what the city should be thinking about too, is that those two things actually can work together. The point
Mhm.
is to drive that development in that part of a town, you create an anchor for it to fill in the gap. It's called a hole in the donut strategy or something like that's what they would call it, like on a land use perspective. Is the stadium and the corporate buildings that they would build down there, plus the residential that would extend towards Jack London Square, creates a magnet for development between downtown and that period and that place in time. So I'm not arguing that the A's should get
Mhm.
like that; those taxes should go back to be paying for the stadium to be built or any of that sort of stuff. But I am saying those two things actually are work together. They're not against one another. And I think that's one of the things that the way the
Mhm.
narrative has gone around this that should be fixed. And I don't understand why people are grasping it a little bit differently, which is that this isn't about baseball over community. Baseball's part of the community, and the baseball at that particular spot helps drive community development between where the existing central core of the downtown in Oakland is and where that stadium is. So it is the area that Oakland already wants to grow. They
Mhm.
should be working together on those two things. They actually will. So another stadium to think about when we're talking about this kind of stuff is Coors Field in Denver. They built it in a spot called Lodo, lower downtown. They had
Mhm.
a 20-year general plan to build from like Larimer Square down to where the All-Star game is going to be played this week. It took 5 years for their plan to finish. They went from having a 20-year plan to a 5-year plan.
Is it because they saw like instant returns and stuff like that? Because I know everybody says that's a great ballpark to visit. There's like just like a really fun,
Yeah.
downtown area. Is that so? Like they immediately like how do you condense a 20-year timeline into 5 years? That seems kind of
Well,
crazy
it's
to me.
because what happens is that that ballpark is now a reason that people go from one part of downtown to another. And there's this huge corridor of stuff that was just empty warehouses, undeveloped lots, that kind of stuff that was already available and ready to go and to be built and for things to happen there. That same thing exists in Jack London Square right now, like between downtown and Jack London Square. And that is exactly why a ballpark there makes a bunch of sense because it is very comparable to what happened in Coors Field. That's
'Cause-
exactly it.
yeah. So do you think it'll be like just all the foot traffic from downtown areas that people
I
who just
think
want to
so.
walk or like
So if you
because
look
I
at
know
the
you and Casey
EIR,
did some boots on the
yeah,
ground
yeah. We
research on
walked
that.
we walked that whole thing, and actually,
Yeah, can you give
from
some
12th
people
Street.
some background on some that stuff that you and Case so you guys basically walk from the Lake Merritt bar to Howard Terminal, 12th to Howard Terminal, 19th Street to Howard Terminal, right? Is it
We
those?
we did no, we did not. We did 12th to
Uh-huh.
Howard Terminal, and we did Lake Merritt to Howard Terminal. And let me explain why we did those.
Hmm.
I live in Pleasanton, and so when you think about the BART line that goes to downtown Oakland, like 12th Street and 19th Street, they're not directly on the line between like Fremont, Pleasanton, all that. Well, I guess now it's not even Fremont anymore. Right? It's like all the way down to San
Yeah,
Jose.
San Jose, whatever, or
So
Berryessa
that
or
San Jose line,
whatever. Yeah. Yeah.
unless you want to transfer at some point, the closest BART station that's right on your route is actually Lake Merritt. So we just wanted to say, okay, well, what if we were just on this and we didn't want to get off? And so we walked from Lake Merritt to where Howard Terminal was. And it took us about a half an hour to walk from Lake Merritt to Howard Terminal. But from 12th Street, it took about 20 minutes, like to walk to Howard Terminal. Now, the other thing that's important to note about all of this is actually if I was in the city of Oakland and I was trying to, sell this sort of idea to people, is that it's not even about getting to the ballpark. It's about getting people to Jack London Square and all the restaurants in that entertainment district that's right there. That actually could be so much more for the city of Oakland from a tax generating perspective, right? And so from 12th Street BART to Jack London Square, it's a 10-minute walk. I did that with Casey. And I also on youtube.com/quasi-cousin, which is my own sort of little fun YouTube that I put stuff on. My brother and I did it, and we are actually arguing with each other the whole way. It's called the Batlin August brothers, because my brother was an advocate for Howard Journal like way back in the day, and I was like, nope, I think it's a dumb idea because XXX. And then when we started doing walks like this, I realized, wait a minute, this isn't a dumb idea, because it will spill people right into Jack London Square. And as we've all seen, like at Fan Fest for Oakland A's, when there's a lot of people in Jack London Square, it is happening. There's a lot of fun stuff that you can do. And there's plenty of areas to build new things to do as well. So anyway, that's it from the city of Oakland perspective.
Because everybody will just like pregame at Jack London Square and then it'll just go off. So yeah, I understand like the A's, how they believe that, but also I understand the city too. It's like, how far is the reach, so I feel like that's like a major part of contention in this agreement, or in this negotiation.
No, and I agree that the city should hold firm on the whole Jack London Square IFD, because if you look at the numbers, right, the city's report expects the area to grow by like what 6.4% annually.
6.4, yeah.
And the A's is like 6.8 or 6.9. I mean, like it's really like 0.5%. Like sure, that and then there's also the machinations of getting that approved, right? It's not as simple as a city saying, yep, this is an IFD. And
it needs like 2/3 of the residents' approval, right? And they would be, so I asked Cavill about this a couple episodes ago. I said, so would those people be subject if there's a special tax? He's like, oh, it wouldn't be doubled up, it would be the same. But I was like, I don't know, it just doesn't make sense. It's like, what's the point of a special tax if you're not going to impose it, so I don't. I mean, obviously, I don't know anything about tax code or anything, but
so it's not. See, that's the thing. It's not a new tax, and that's the way that it's the same way that AT&T/Oracle, whatever it's called now, Park was built. And I think that there's a thing that people don't understand. There was a public contribution to building Oracle Park. The stadium itself was financed privately. But in order to build there was a lot of infrastructure work that needed to be done. And that was paid for by the city. It wasn't paid for by the Giants. And what happened is they say, okay, here's this district around the stadium. Here's the boundaries. And the property tax for this district, it costs this much right now. It's at this level. Say it's $10, just for example. And now, when the stadium goes in, all of a sudden, this property tax is now $15. So they use that new $5 to fund the infrastructure. It's not really about a new tax. In Howard Terminal, like where they would build Howard Terminal, there's two things going on there. There is the infrastructure financing district, but then there's also a Mello-Roos tax, which is an additional tax
the CFD
on those units.
Like the community, or what is it, community facilities district or something like that, right? The CFDs, right? Well, that's what I was talking about. I mean, they would need to do that at Jack London Square too, right? There would have to be a CFD there too, right? Or no?
No, the Mello-Roos portion of it would only apply to Howard Terminal. It's only on those new condos that are built there. The increment financing, which is the other part, the $10 to $15 thing, which is way oversimplified, but let's just say that
Yeah, yeah,
That's what would apply in Jack London Square. And the thing is that, and Rebecca Kaplan's absolutely right about this, by the way. She's the one who's been super smart about this whole thing. By the way, we're talking about Dave Cavell, who went to Stanford, Rebecca Kaplan, who went to MIT and Stanford. I mean, like, these are very, very smart people working on through this to get something done.
yeah.
But what she was saying, the point is that if I talked about, like, if we thought about Jack London Square infrastructure financing district, and let's say it's $10 right now, and they already know it's going to get $14, but the A's want it, but with the A's stadium, it will then get to $15. What the A's want is that whole $5 when they should really only be getting that $1.
Okay, yeah, for
That's what
sure.
the
Yeah,
difference is.
yeah, for sure. Thanks for simplifying that. That makes it like a lot easier to understand.
I can't understand it unless I talk about it in that way either.
Yeah, and I'm curious. You know, what there was a maritime operator too, back in 2001, 2002 at Howard Terminal. The
Yeah.
fact that it's basically it's almost like a defunct. It's like a parking lot basically, right?
Yeah.
Has that changed your opinion too? Just the fact that it's not really even. I know the port is trying to say, "Hey, it's going to stop us," but really, it seems
Yeah.
like it's kind of just like an offshoot. It's a 2% of the whole
Yep.
land. It's physically separated by Schnitzer Steel. So, I
That's
mean,
absolutely something that changed my mind,
yeah.
because back in the day, back in 2000, 2001,
Mhm,
when all this stuff first started being talked about, 2001, 2002, actually.
mhm,
Because I always say 2001, 2002, because the report by HOK was released on like December 15th, 2001. So I never even read any of it until 2002. So, like, that's why it kind of
uh-huh,
hit right in that period of time.
uh-huh,
But back then, that port was usable for maritime activity. You could actually, the cargo ships of that day could still deliver
yeah,
large containers. And they have this thing that they call TEU, which is 20-foot equivalent units.
uh-huh.
So that's how you measure the effective productivity of a port, is how many TEUs can you do. Well, Howard Terminal can do absolutely none. It's zero, because the
I heard,
ships of today can't
yeah,
go there.
yeah, they're
It's
too
too
big,
shallow.
right? I heard they're too big and the water's too shallow, so it can't
Yeah.
even accommodate today's boats. So it's like
Right.
kind of just sitting there, right? It's just
Yeah.
kind of like, so yeah, this is yeah, because right now they're valuing the land at about $29.5 million. And they think in 20 years or no, 15 years it'll be like 7.6 billion. So
Yep.
I honestly think, yeah. I mean, so historically, this is like the farthest it's gone on, right? It seems like, both, the A's want, I know they're posturing with Vegas and stuff like that, but it seems like they actually do want to make this happen. It sounds like the county wants to make it happen, the city wants to make it happen. It just seems like everybody kind of needs more time, right? Because there's so much going on, right? I mean,
And so the county thing, like, it was a perfect example when we're talking about that tax increment finance that we were talking about earlier. Um, the reason that I think the city wants to bring in the county, is because they can't justify that Jack London Square district. Like, you and I both get it. We understand, like, yeah, they can't get all that money when it's already going to be there anyway. That is actually taking from
mhm,
um, the general fund. But if the county contributes its portion of the taxes on the Howard Terminal site, then it makes it a smaller gap to get through, right? Like, now they can raise more cash because they're taking property taxes from both the city and the county that are generated by the project and applying them to the infrastructure for the project.
mhm,
So they already thought about that. And also, that's why that's going on. So, like, it's one of the moving pieces. The
yeah.
other thing, when we're talking about, like,
Because it comes
uh,
down to about a $300 million price tag for the whole offsite infrastructure, is from what I understand, right? And like
yep,
the city's vision is to take about half, and then the county takes half of the
yep,
responsibility, right? That's
yep,
that's what that's where we're at right now, right? I mean,
yep. And
yeah.
and the way to think about this too, by the way, is that um, the city and county aren't paying this huge amount of money right up front. They're not paying for it at all, actually. It's being paid for as a part of the project. So, like, the developer pays for the infrastructure. All this tax increment financing does is that portion, which I believe, like, I 100% believe, um, I'm a FDR Democrat. I 100% believe government has a role to play in this, and their role to play is to build infrastructure. And that happens all over the country. And we actually, we're seeing in national politics, there's a whole debate about how you do all this, right? So the
Mhm.
infrastructure around this district should be financed by the county and the city. But the A's would actually they would be paying for it up front, and then over 45 years, these bonds would be being paid back by that tax increment financing. So it's not like the city and county are going to write some big check and say, "Here you go." It's actually just a way to finance a
Yeah, it's just
huge
like
development.
they're agreeing to give their future tax revenues to the A's to pay them back for infrastructure that benefits.
Right,
You could argue it's there 365 days a year. It's not there on game days. It's always there, kind of thing,
right,
right? Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. So this is like the farthest this negotiation has gone, as like, right, throughout this whole 20-year process. This is, I mean, that's the thing, is like I want to let people know, like, yeah, like both sides are working hard to make this happen. It's just there's a lot there's just a lot to
Yeah,
get through, right?
and that's the other
Yeah.
thing I wanted to say when we were talking
Yeah.
earlier, and I was
Yeah.
explaining my technology
Yeah.
career, which
Yeah.
like I'm not going to go there again, but
No,
like
it's all good, dude. Yeah, whatever.
but
Yeah.
the idea is that when you're doing these kind of developments and that sort of thing, is this always happens, right? Like somebody like we will put the money out there first to get it done, but
Uh-huh.
when it's to be taken care of, but when it's something that's really not just for us as a business, we then the government does pay us back over like a long period of time to make sure that it's
So this
uh,
is an unprecedented ask by the A's. This is like this is pretty common ask, right? Or what? Yeah.
yeah, it's done everywhere. Like
Yeah.
literally, it was done at Oracle Park, like exactly as we're
Uh-huh.
talking about. This is exactly what happened. So it's not like it's some sort of like tax raid. It's actually just a way to get something done for the city.
Mhm. And the
Anyway,
fact that, yeah, and the fact that those funds could potentially go to the general fund, do you feel like there's like a conflict there? Like, and the fact that by law the money that's captured by these IFDs can only go towards public facilities, and
mhm,
it seems like they can only go to infrastructure. They can't go to like social. It sounds like they can't go to like social programs. Um, and so a lot of people at this July 7th meeting, a lot of the opposition has says, hey, great, $450 million from the A's is great, but we can only put it towards, infrastructure upgrades. We can't put it towards mental and, social, problem,
right.
programs that the county need. What good is that for ultimately, what benefit is that for the community? So do
Yeah,
you feel like that the structure of the repayment is a roadblock too, that they have to figure out?
I mean, they're going to have to get so that's one thing to uh, think about in all of this. And I'm glad to hear you say like it's a negotiation because that's the one thing that I think
Yeah, this
falls.
is ongoing. Yeah, this is just a very public negotiation, right?
Right.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
like when I was doing like data center stuff and there's like 5 different cities that I'm trying to work with, we're negotiating with all of them right up to the last minute. Like
Uh-huh.
literally. Like it's always an 11th hour Hail Mary. Like you
Mhm.
figure out this is the best fit for us, for a city, for a region, this place, and I really want this done. But I also have to keep talking to so and so because like I don't know that this is going to work. You can't it's a negotiation, so you can't actually like figure out what the outcome of that negotiation is going to be till it's over, right? But
Yeah.
like I think we're in the 11th hour of a negotiation around Howard Terminal, and there's a lot of details are going to be worked out. But the idea is right now you have to say, yep, we're going to commit to this. We have to get to a point where we're going to commit to this, and this is as far as it's gotten. Like you're right, 100%. It's
Mhm.
never gotten to the point. There's an EIR that can be certified, this year that says, yep, from an environmental impact standpoint, we approve this development.
Mhm.
That's a huge thing. I
And
mean,
that's never that's has there even ever been a draft? Has there ever even been a public comment period for the, because as they, yeah, the draft was what submitted, um or I don't know, a few months ago, right? And then they had like to go through public comment for a couple months,
yep,
and now the city is reviewing all 400 comments, and that takes a while.
yep,
The East Oakland Stadium Alliance was all up in there. Um,
yep,
so that's where they're at now. And then, as Molly Mabron said, it could be as early as late October, but then it would go to like the planning commission, and then it would go to the city council. So it's
yep.
like, and it's funny. That's why I think it's crazy. Well, not crazy, but it's just, I don't know why they're pushing this July 20th
I
you
do.
know,
I do.
so yeah, I mean, just so they can put public pressure on officials, right? To say, oh, you said
No,
you wanted
no,
this,
I
right?
mean,
Like,
that's part of it. That's
yeah.
part of it. Yes. It's part of the negotiation.
Uh-huh.
But also, the one thing that I don't think people understand is that they're negotiating, not the A's, but the league is negotiating with the players right now. And the players in the league are very unhappy with two situations. And you can imagine what they are, because they're the same ones we've all heard about forever. The revenue situation in Tampa Bay and the revenue situation in Oakland. Um, that's why the A's like have this sort of deadline. And you'll note when they start talking about the lease term, I don't think the A's care if they sign a lease for 45 years or for 20 years or whatever. I mean, they're not going to put $12 billion into a port, a former port terminal, and in 20 years decide, okay, we're done with this, because it won't even be done for 15. I mean, it's like, okay,
Yeah. But that's
but
what's weird is that like the non-relocation agreement, there's an impasse there because the A's only want it to be 20 years, right?
it's
And
not the A's. That's the thing that I'm trying to explain.
oh, okay. It's
It's Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball has to be involved in that actual decision. And you'll see, you can actually, I bet you can find a quote from Dave Cavill somewhere. I haven't, but I bet you could, where he references Major League Baseball when it comes to that, because they have to be involved in those sort of long-term lease signings, because it's actually impacting their negotiation with the players. Most of this stuff that's wired around getting it done as fast as possible, it's two things. It's been going on for 20 years. Whether there's plenty of blame, right? Like the A's looked at multiple different sites in multiple different cities. So it's not like Oakland's been on the hook for like 20 years. Like that's a ridiculous way to think about it. Um, so get all that. But right now, Major League Baseball is like, cool. For the last 5 years, we've said we're going to be in Oakland, and nothing's moved forward. That's the way that they're going to sell it in a negotiation. We don't even have. We've had the state legislature sign up for this. We've had, like the
yeah,
governor sign a bill,
yeah, like the
and the
port
city
voted on
council of
it, all
Oakland
that
hasn't
stuff.
even said, yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where that comes from, because it's actually more related to that negotiation with the players than it is with just specifically what the Oakland A's want.
Mhm. So I mean, yeah, what do you think needs to happen? I know it's only 8 days until July 20th. They haven't even publicly released the revised term sheet yet. That's expected in the next 4 days.
Mhm.
Where does this go from here? I know, I know that's a pretty broad question, but
It's
I mean,
hard to know, dude. I
like in the next, like, yeah, like, I guess between now and the 20th, because I know a lot will be revealed on the 20th.
yeah, I think
Just leading up into that city council non-binding vote, what's going to happen, I guess.
three things are clear to me. Like three things.
Mhm.
Number one, there's not going to be a stadium for the Oakland A's built at the Coliseum. So people need to get that out of their mind. That's not going to be happen. Major League Baseball won't let that happen. They don't want it there. Okay.
Mhm.
Number two, John Fisher isn't selling the Oakland A's, and us fans don't get a vote in who owns the team. Like it doesn't matter. Like,
Yeah.
okay, so and the third is that whatever development happens for any on Howard Terminal, whether it's a ballpark or not, a very very rich man is going to get very much more richer.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying is that I hope those three distractions are get pushed out of people's minds as they're
Like
trying.
that's just the reality. Yeah. That's like
Those
just
are
the reality.
real. That's
Yeah.
reality, right?
Yeah.
So, so when the A's say it's Howard Terminal or bust, I absolutely believe them. Now, from the city side of things, I we all live in this market. We understand what it's like, right? How expensive real estate is, all that sort of stuff.
Mhm.
Real estate developers stand to make a crap ton of money from a waterfront development in the richest part of the world, right? Like way more than they stand to make from building a ballpark in the middle of the desert.
Yeah. I mean, yeah,
Right?
it's like, yeah. Oh, you mean compared to Vegas, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, Vegas
Yeah.
is a terrible market for baseball, and I'm tired of people pretending like it's not. Like this is the thing. Like I don't like to engage in disingenuous arguments from anybody, and I think that the A's pushing of Vegas is that it's a stalking horse, and I get it. But like, come on, dude. If you could build a waterfront development in the Bay Area, which is the economic engine of the world right now, like the Bay Area, like Silicon Valley, used to be Santa Clara Valley. Technology, the gravity of the world right now from an economic perspective now extends all the way up to San Francisco, across the bay into Oakland. Square is in Oakland. I work at a company called Marquetta in Oakland, right? and it goes all the way down the East Bay, back down to San Jose. That is the spot. So if you could actually do a development there, the reason they're willing to do a $12 billion development is because they're going to make way more than $12 billion off making it happen. That's not the same thing that will happen in Las Vegas. You know, it's just ridiculous. So
just be like in a dusty parking lot somewhere that, you know, just a classic Vegas development. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like whatever, you know, and I'm sure they could justify it to themselves with some spreadsheets and that sort of stuff. But I mean, come on, so much of baseball's revenue is dependent on the local market, way more. The NFL can.
And there's so much money in the East Bay, and there's new money in the East Bay too. Like there's so many, like I know, like, you know, the average house in Oakland's over $1 million now or something ridiculous.
Yep.
So it's like, dude, there's so much money here. Like you gotta, and there's people who are probably casual fans who just don't, they don't want to go to the Coliseum. So, but if there's a shiny new ballpark, they'll be like, oh, we can go to Jack London and we'll go to the game. Like, dude, like it would work. I think it would work for sure.
It's a very good point also that you make there, by the way, is that this isn't really about guys like me and you who care about the Oakland A's so deeply. It's we'll drive to Concord to watch the Oakland A's.
Yeah, like where's the game at? Yeah.
I'll go to Antioch.
I got nothing wrong with Concord.
Right? But it's the other part of the market that they're trying to attract. And that part of the market is way more lucrative for them than the occasional tourist in Vegas.
Yeah. I think it's like they could just attract all those fringe kind of like, oh, they just want something to do. And like, oh, I'll be an A's fan for a night and like spend a couple $100 on your, you know, like,
that's
they just got stupid money
to, realistic, you know, the media market there, like the size of it, you know, all that sort of stuff. So anyway, that's in the city's favor, right? So we know the city has this geographical reason for why, you know, they can leverage to get a good deal. The A's have other leverage that they're trying to pull, which is like, okay, well, we can just go somewhere else and get a free stadium built for us, because that's what it would take for them to go to Vegas. Somebody's going to have to pay for them to have a close to $1 billion stadium that somebody else built. They're not going to do it themselves there, right? There's a difference. That's the other thing. It's a difference between a public and a private sort of thing. Because there's not the return on the private investment that they're going to get in the same kind of a way that they could get in the Bay Area. But anyway, all that stuff is at play. I don't know what the answer is going to be at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is like at this point, like I feel like everybody's super educated, but nobody actually knows where this is headed. Like, you know. So, but it seems like that both sides want to make it happen, though.
Right.
Know? Like
that's exactly it. There are smart people on both sides of this table, and actually, it's multilateral, right? There's
now there's like there's a bunch of tables.
So, all these people, there's really smart people involved, and they want to get it done. They will get it done. It's not that it's not impossible. There's no problem that anybody's brought up yet that it's a complete end of the world situation. They'll figure it out. Like,
it's a negotiation. It's just we're just seeing where the lines in the sand are being drawn right now, basically. You know?
Right. And like I'll be honest, as a guy who's negotiated a lot of these kind of things, is like I thought they'd be a lot further apart right now than they really are.
So like it's not. It's like this is doable.
This is doable. And like, I mean, the affordable housing thing. Let's think about that, man. They could pay it. Dan Cobb said what, $75 million or in the neighborhood.
Impact fee. Yeah, 75.
So many times now that I can't remember.
Oh yeah, 75 million in impact fees. Yeah,
right.
Like that's all they would have. That
could either be like in the neighborhood or above or around, like some phrase, but basically 75 million was the number you spit out. So that's people are going to remember, right? What is 75 million when it comes to $12 billion development? It's 0.625%. Yeah. Like that's nothing. That's like under.
If G.O.A.P stock goes up by like a cent, Fisher probably makes that, you know. So
yeah, I mean, exactly. So like that's a negotiating stance, like, right? That's how you see it. It's brinksmanship, right? It's them saying, nope, we're not going to do this in order to get the best deal possible for them. And that's what the city's pulling back, right? Like they're going, okay, no, you're going to have to do this. And so that's the kind of discussions that have needed to happen.
Because right now, you know, Oakland wants at least 450 units of the 3,000 proposed units at the full build out to be affordable housing. But then the A's could just basically pay $75 million and have 100% market rate housing. Just get crazy. I mean, it's a huge deal. So
I mean, it's not definitely something that shouldn't derail a $12 billion investment. I guess we put that.
Yeah.
Neither is the lease term, right? That's not something that should derail a $12 billion private
Yeah.
investment.
But I mean, isn't it more like it's like if the A's are unwilling to budge on that, like that 450 unit thing? Like
Yeah.
isn't it
No,
more
I
about the
think.
450 than the
Oh,
75
no,
million?
no. I'll put. I just to put this like I try to speak very plainly and straightforward. It's not the city being an ass in this case. Like,
Yeah.
it is the A's who should be looking at this and going like, "Oh, it's under 1%. That's a rounding error for a $12 billion investment. Of course, we're gonna. Okay, cool. Even if the A's said like, like, okay, will pay that $75 million up front if you guys give us this other thing, whatever that other thing
But
is."
it sounds like the community doesn't want the A's to pay. The community wants to guarantee that the 450 will be there, and the A's don't seem willing to make that commitment. So I think that's where
Yeah,
the
I don't know. We'll see. Like,
yeah.
I don't know internally like how that's going, but I would expect like if I was the dude doing this, I would expect it will end up being an impact fee. I think, or they could do some chicanery like the Giants did at Mission Rock, right? Like where you see today, like Scott Ostler's putting up this stuff about, see, the Giants are doing affordable housing. And if you go and look at the actual details of what that affordable housing is, 16% of that affordable housing is actually for people who make under 100% of the median income in San Francisco. 16, it's not 40, right?
Mhm.
The other 17% of it is up to 120% of median. So these are people who are already making a decent living in San Francisco. And then 7% more of that is actually targeted for people who make 150% of median
So
income.
it's just like
It's chicanery. It's
yeah.
actually, and that's the thing that drove me nuts. Why I jumped back into this, because arguments like that are lazy and disingenuous. And to say, hey, John Fisher, you're not as good as the Giants because you're not doing 40% of affordable housing, as is the Leday, is actually crap. It's not true. Look at the details. 150% of median income in San Francisco is a lot of money.
Dude,
Like,
yeah, you're
that an affordable
yeah, yeah, you're probably
get out of
making
here,
yeah,
dude.
yeah,
And actually do
yeah.
some research before you write these lazy narratives. And that's the thing. Like Osler, Killian, those two people in particular have made so many ridiculous bad faith arguments that don't even apply to the situation. Like talking about other cities, like Cleveland, right? Cleveland is an example of why you shouldn't be thinking about doing a quote unquote Coliseum city at the same time as your downtown is blowing up. Because when they built Progressive Field in Cleveland, they also built a 25-minute walk away, a thing called the Flats. So they built an entertainment district away from the core of their downtown at the same time. And that just splits the effectiveness of both of them, right? So the
Mhm.
city should be all over, let's build something here, and then let's
Just
find out what the best
focus on West
people.
Oakland, just focus on
Yeah,
Howard Terminal development.
we
Yeah.
have we like we're talking, right? Like you have Temescal all the way down, come down Broadway. There's all kinds of great things going on in Oakland, from
Yeah.
Fox Theater at 19th
Yeah,
Street all the way.
they're slowly connecting like the 19th Street all the way up to 40th Street, and then
Yeah,
40th to 40 to 50th is already Temescal, so it'll be like that whole corridor basically will be
right,
revitalized. Yeah,
right.
so
And
yeah,
so you maximize the impact of that by staying in that part of town. But also, that's not to say that at the Coliseum site you can't do something else that actually drives a huge economic impact. And that's another part of all of this, which is like if you go to Fruitvale BART and you get off, there's a cool little development right around it, right? Like, have you been there before,
yeah,
Fruitvale?
yeah, yeah. I was just there a couple
There's
weeks
some
ago,
little
actually. Yeah,
restaurants and that sort of stuff. It's a smaller impact because it's just about commuters coming in and out. You could do that same thing at the Coliseum site, but the rest of the site, you could do things like, the A's had a plan for a part of their plan or their drawing. I don't know that it's technically a plan,
no,
but
yeah, I remember seeing that thing. Yeah, that little they just
there's a college there, right? Did you just see that like Northeastern University, really prestigious East Coast university, now is taking over the old Mills College site and making it their West Coast campus, right? You have the African American Sports and Entertainment Group who wants to do some sort of African American downtown Main Street right there by the BART station, which is just like the thing I'm talking about in Fruitvale, right? Like it's the same kind of idea. Well, why wouldn't you be working with someone like Howard University and having their West Coast right here in Oakland, right at the Coliseum site? Like that would be a fantastic thing for East Oakland.
mhm.
Why can't you have like why wouldn't we be thinking about things like Amazon and Walmart build these distribution hubs all over the place that do provide good paying jobs and that sort of thing for the community. What would work at a site where there's rail access, where there's a couple miles down the road, the airport, where there is freeway on ramps and off ramps, that a massive infrastructure to
Hmm.
just bring trucks in and out like that? That's right at the Coliseum site. So you could bring jobs to East Oakland. You could bring something like a West Coast Howard University for Oakland. You could also still build that development for East Oakland, right by the Coliseum site. You're not going to do that if the A's are putting need to put a sea of parking around a ballpark, and that's the other thing that I think people miss when we're talking about the Coliseum site. Is it's if you go to newballpark.org, I worked with Ramses a lot.
Yeah, I was gonna say you used to work. Yeah, you used to write with him, right? Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
he's written the definitive piece on this that's called "The Campus That Wants to Be a Downtown." The way that the Coliseum is laid out, the stuff that goes on there, um, it's actually set up perfectly for a campus or like a theme park or that kind. That's the way to think about it. It's
Well,
not set up.
do you mean like a Google campus or something like that, or do you mean like an Apple like campus, or I mean, I don't know,
Absolutely.
some tech company where who really wants to spread out and
I would think more of like a logistics sort of facility
Okay.
for shipping and receiving and that kind of stuff that you could
Hmm.
move, same day deliveries, all that kind of stuff that is perfectly set up for that sort of an environment.
Hmm.
Um, but those are the kind of things that are going to bring a real economic change to East Oakland. It's going to be a real job center for people. Whereas a sporting facility, if you build a baseball stadium and then try to convert it into this whole neighborhood around it, all of those advantages that I just talked about actually go away because there is now a gridlock within the site. So those big points of entry that exist, they don't actually exist anymore, right? Like you can't have this massive freeway infrastructure into just a simple downtown neighborhood. And that's the other thing about Howard Terminal, is that since it's connected to downtown, there are multiple ways to filter in and out. You can go to Lake Merritt BART, you can go to 12th Street BART, you can go to West Oakland BART, right? Like people can go in all those different directions. At the Coliseum, there's one BART station. If it ended up being a massive neighborhood and all these other things built around it, um, what would that one BART station would become a bottleneck? It wouldn't become an advantage. And that's the sort of thing that I think that people need to think about when you're talking about that site in particular.
Yeah, there's so many ways to look at this, dude. It's crazy. Yeah. I
Yeah,
know.
the angles are off the chart, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I just, I was born, my uncle Kevin, and I might get a little emotional, so please bear with me here, because my uncle Kevin was, my dad died when I was a little boy, and he had 6 brothers, and my mom had a brother, so I basically grew up with 7 fathers, and my uncle Kevin was one of them.
Mhm.
And he used to introduce me to people and say, "This is my nephew, Jeff. He was born in the shadow of 3 World Series trophies in Oakland, California in 1975." And he passed away not like 20 years ago. And I still, when I go to the Coliseum, I still feel him there. I understand what it is about the Coliseum that we all love, and I understand why it's important to all of us. It is important to me.
Mhm.
Um, But I think that for the benefit of the people that live in that part of Oakland, it's better for them to actually have real opportunities there. Rather, the jobs that an entertainment, a ballpark provides for people, they're not jobs that provide you a living wage. They're not
Yeah, and they're
jobs.
seasonal too, right? It's like very
Right.
seasonal. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was listening to your episode with Hal, and he was talking about how people would work at all these different venues, save up as much money as they could during the season, and then they spend that money down. And like, so he ran a GoFundMe for people that were vendors who weren't going to have any jobs because they'd already spent all their money down, And it's like, that's not a winning economic solution for anybody. So let's build something there that actually helps East Oakland 100 365 days a year, like, and there are things that you can do there that are not, a WNBA team's great, the arena's not going anywhere. 18 days a year with 3,000 people, that is a benefit. It's not a massive benefit, but it's a benefit. But there are other things you could do with the rest of that site that actually help everybody who already lives there in a way better way than a ballpark would.
Hmm. For sure. Well, thanks for that story, dude. Yeah,
Sorry.
I know everybody has a deep connection with the A's somehow, on this podcast.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, Well, yeah, let's talk about some baseball. I mean, are you more excited for the home run derby or the All-Star game at this point, honestly? Just as a
Ah,
fan, just as a fan, you know?
I I really love the home run derby usually, but I haven't been that into the All-Star game for a long time, and I
Yeah.
actually think that it's just um, my favorite player of, you know, we got eras, right? My favorite player of the early 2000 era was Eric Chavez.
Mhm.
Dude was smooth as silk at third base, hit 30 home runs, drove in 100 runs, did all this sort of stuff. Did it for like 6 years in a row, where he was actually one of the best players. He was a silver slugger, and he was never an all-star. Um, and that's because, you know, fan voting and probably
Yeah.
people in other
Yeah, I
markets.
know there's a lot of pomp and circumstance now. Yeah. It's just all,
So
it's
to
not
me,
what it used to be. Yeah, not what it
yeah,
used to
so
be.
to
Yeah.
me, it's just like, man,
They don't
I
even,
don't really want to get
yeah.
up about watching Aroldis Chapman in his 7 ERA pitching in an All-Star game because he's going to get
Yeah.
like honestly, like that's the sort of stuff that makes me. So I will watch it. It'll be on in the background, but
Yeah, I
it's
think honestly the thing I'm most stoked to see is Olsen in the home run derby. I think the home run derby is honestly even better than the game because, like, I don't know, like if you're watching for Olsen, he gets like one or two at bats in the game. Maybe
yeah,
he gets a ground ball to him. It's like whatever. But the home run derby, it's sweet. You know, he's like center stage and everything. It's kind
yeah.
of
And the
cool.
way I think about it actually is like if you contrast it with the NBA. What do I like about the NBA? The 3-point shooting contest. Like I
Yeah,
don't even watch the NBA All-Star game. I just watch a 3-point shooting contest.
yeah,
Um, that
yeah,
stuff is dope, and that's
yeah,
what to me what the home run derby is. I like those sort of skills competitions. They're kind of
yeah. For our YouTube viewers, we made it this far without mentioning your X-ray in the background. What's going on here with the lizard, dude? Please fill us in on your background. Yeah.
that is an X-ray of an iguana. And
Yeah,
that's
because
because
you're multi. I mean, like we said at the top, you're omni-channel. A part of it is that you're a musician as well, right? That has something to do with your
yeah,
band name you picked out of a hat, right?
yeah.
So-
I was in a thing where 5 people that didn't even know each other were thrown together to be a band, and we had 6 weeks to come up with something, and we named our band Power Lizard, PWRLZRD, like no vowels. And I made this the background of my Zoom so that when we perform, we didn't really perform. We presented a video that we performed.
yeah,
When
for
I
our
was,
listeners, it's like an X-ray of a lizard. Yeah.
yeah, it's an X-ray. You see, it's an iguana. You can
Yeah,
see all the
or an
the
iguana.
scales and all that stuff. Yeah.
That's hilarious, man. So what other stuff? I mean, so yeah, you're a writer. You obviously involved in technical negotiations and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
I've
What
written 2
else?
books. You
Uh,
can find them. They're called The Inside the Lemoore Incident, and another one called Kingdoms Wrought with Steel. Um, I am a musician who's put out a bunch of music. I run a comic book company with my friend. We have a company called Voltage Comics, where actually our book that we've put out so far, we have others coming. It's actually set in a fictional place called Baylandia. I wonder what that could be based on. And our hero is from a place called The Town. So I don't know what that could be.
Who knows? That's
But like
cool.
I mean, I'm 100% Bay Area. I love the place, so it doesn't matter.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I know, yeah, we're there's like we could just talk about this for hours and hours and hours. There's so many layers and levels to this, but thank you so much for your insight and the comparisons and like the historical context because I've only really closely started following this within the past like few weeks, honestly, like with
Yeah.
that June 15th meeting, and I'm just trying to catch myself up to speed. So it's cool to hear. Yeah, it's like, dude, we're farther along in this whole process. Like this is there is a real chance this could happen, which is
Yeah.
exciting. That's
And
what's
I
really
think
exciting.
everybody who wants to know, I've been to 24 Major League Baseball home games, different teams. So I've been to 24 markets to watch baseball games. And the cities that everyone should be thinking about when they think about Howard Terminal are Safeco Field, where there is a stadium built right next to a port, a downtown that goes right on the port. They should be thinking about Oracle, which is the same sort of financing model. They should
Uh-huh.
be thinking about Petco Park in San Diego, which is a similar thing where they took an existing district like Jack London Square is the gas lamp and this sort of thing and turned it into something much bigger than it had been before. That's great for the local economy. They should be thinking about Coors Field and about those things we were talking about earlier about the development in between. And they should be thinking about Nationals Park, and they should be thinking about Chase Center in San Francisco. Those are all the things that this place could be and more and better. And those are all great for their local economies.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. And make sure to read Jeff's guest column in today's SF Gate. Let's see, what is it titled again? It is titled "I Used to Be Against the Oakland A an Oakland A's Howard Terminal Development Plan. Now I support it." So yeah, make sure you guys check that out. Published on July 12th in the SF Gate. So Jeff, thank you so much for your time, man. I really, really appreciate your insights and expertise in this
Thanks,
very
Alex.
super complicated topic. So yeah, thanks.
I try to make it simple, even though I
Yeah,
fail sometimes. But anyway, thank you very much.
thanks, man.